Do the headlights on your vehicle look something like this? They're really faded, hazed over, and generally just look terrible? Stick around because we're going to see if we can save this. Welcome to Home Built Workshop. I'm Jeff. Today we're tackling a little car problem that's very common on a lot of newer vehicles that have this plastic headlight housing. Almost all newer vehicles have these plastic headlight lenses, and they're really prone to hazing over and getting really cloudy, and just it looks terrible. There are several kits available that you can pick up at your local auto parts store that are sold specifically for polishing headlights like this, but I'm going to use some materials and tools that I already have and see if we can come close at restoring the clarity on these lenses. Some of the results you're going to get are going to vary depending on how badly damaged your headlight lenses are. This one in particular has some cracks and it's really in pretty bad shape, and it might not be a bad candidate to just replace the entire thing, but I don't want to go that far just yet. I want to see how this turns out after we do a little bit of polishing on it. Sometimes you're going to need to do some wet sanding with a high grit sandpaper before the polishing, but we're just going to jump right in and hit it with some coarse polish and see how it turns out. Before we get started, I want to take a quick look at the tools and materials that we're going to use to do this job. To do the polishing, I'm going to use this little 3-inch buffer. This is a Milwaukee M12. It's a 3-inch buffer. It takes these little 4-inch Velcro backed pads. For the buffing pads, I'm going to use this 4-pad system. This is their Perfect-It system. We're going to start out with what is probably the coarsest one, although it's not really all that coarse, but this is a wool buffing pad. Then we're going to move to this white pad, which is just a little bit smoother, then the black pad, and then the finest pad, which is the blue pad. These are all going to use different compounds. Now, speaking of compounds, I'm also going to use the 3M Perfect-It system with the exception of the Step 1 polish. Now, these 3M compounds really are kind of pricey for a buffing compound, so I've opted for this compound here. This is made by Presta. Presta has their own 3-step process for buffing, and this is their first step. It's very comparable to the Step 1 of the 3M. The only reason I'm using this is, like I said, just because it's a little bit cheaper, and really because also you use the most of this one, so I'm just trying to save a couple bucks there. So far it's worked out well for me, but we're going to start with this white compound, then we're going to move to this gray compound, and the blue compound, just like the blue pad, is the finest, and that's going to be the last step. And just to let you guys know, this video is not at all sponsored or affiliated with any of the products that I'm showing or using here. I just want to let you know the exact products and manufacturers that I'm using. So let's jump back out there and get back to this polishing. I'll begin the process by applying a layer of masking tape around the outside edge of the headlight. This is just a little bit of extra insurance to make sure I don't hit anything other than the headlight lens. I'll start out with the wool pad on the buffer. We'll apply a little bit of compound to the buffing pad. I always like to give it the old smear around before I actually turn on the buffer. This kind of helps to cut down some of the compound from just slinging all over the place when you turn on the buffer, although I still get a fair share of it on me during this process. Not really a big deal. Now we'll just go to town with this wool pad and the Step 1 compound. This step is probably the most important and the one where we're going to remove the most of the material. While you're doing the polishing though, it's important to keep the pad moving. Don't let it sit in one spot or you'll risk possibly overheating and maybe even melting the lens. Once we've gone over the entire thing, I'll use a microfiber cloth to wipe off the residual compound. And already it's looking better. You can really see where this thing's really chipped and cracked up. That's why I say it might be a good candidate to just replace this one, but I'm gonna see what happens. And now I'll switch over to the white foam pad. I'm going to also use the same Step 1 compound, but this pad is just a little bit softer than the wool buffing pad. After that, I'm just going to keep working up through the grits. Now I'm going to use the black pad as well as the gray compound. We are just about ready to now switch to the blue and final pad. Now, one thing I really like about these pads is they have this little lip here, which when you put it on the backer, It actually protects the edge of the backer, kind of makes it a little bit safer when you get into the corners or bumping into other areas that you don't really intend to polish, but it's still a good idea to put some tape around your lights though. Well, that looks about 1,000,000 times better from where we started. Now, is it 100% perfect? No, it's absolutely not, but it will last us quite a while before I have to end up replacing these things. Like I said, there's other methods available, kits you can buy, but we did this with just materials that we already had on hand, didn't have to buy a special kit. There are links in the description to some of the kits that I'm familiar with in case you guys want to try some of that, as well as to the products that I used to do this. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you found it helpful. We'll see you next time.